It started on an unusually quiet Saturday morning. I was in the kitchen, halfway through my coffee, when I heard a loud engine rev just outside. At first, I assumed it was one of the neighbors, or maybe a delivery truck, but then heard voices, strange ones I didn't recognize. I looked out the window and saw a woman I'd never met directing two men as they began unloading large studio lights, folding chairs, and even a giant ring light from a van. They were carrying everything straight into my garage. First, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe they had the wrong address. Maybe they were meant to be across the street. But no, the address was right, and they were confidently setting up shop like they owned the place. I threw on a hoodie and rushed out the back door. The moment I stepped onto the driveway, I was met with a very theatrical "oh hey" from a blonde woman wearing oversized sunglasses and a pink tracksuit. She was filming herself on her phone. "Excuse me," I said. "What are you doing in my garage?" She blinked behind her shades like I just interrupted her live performance. Then, with this smug little laugh, she said, "Oh, I figured it was okay. Your garage was just sitting there. You weren't using it," as if that justified literally breaking into someone's private property and treating it like a rental. I was stunned. I looked inside and saw lighting equipment set up like a mini studio. My boxes had been shoved aside. My tools, my old guitar amp, the bike I hadn't ridden in years, all crammed into a corner while she posed in front of a pastel backdrop with the words, "Boss Babe Energy," spelled out in gold letters. She was turning my garage into a content studio. Without even asking, I told her to pack up and leave immediately, but she just shook her head and kept filming. She waved to the camera and said, "Guys, this is the drama I was telling you about. Some people just don't understand collaboration vibes." I wanted to shout. I really did. But I was trying to keep calm. There were at least 3 people filming, and the last thing I needed was to end up as the angry stranger on one of those Karen gets owned TikToks, except this time the Karen wasn't the victim. She was the one stealing space. I asked her again, more firmly, "Who told you this was okay?" She finally stopped filming for a second and pulled out her phone. She showed me an app, one of those home sharing platforms. She'd apparently booked a garage studio listed as Urban Minimalist Vibe Space Content Ready. She paid $120 for 2 hours. Except the address was mine. That's when it hit me. Someone was renting out my garage behind my back. I rent the front house to a woman named Kelly. She's lived there about 6 months. Nice enough, quiet, paid rent on time, no issues. I live in the smaller unit behind the house, which used to be the garage before I converted it. The actual garage is detached, empty except for my stuff. I use it for storage, and it's not part of Kelly's rental agreement. At least it wasn't supposed to be. But now this random influencer and her crew were in there filming a vlog. When I asked the woman who gave her access, she pointed to Kelly's window and said, "The owner, I think." She gave me the code to the smart lock and everything. That's when I realized Kelly had added a keypad lock to the garage last month. She said it was for security, and I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe she was storing something too. But no, she was using my garage as an income stream. She was renting it out without permission. Karen, or whatever her real name was, didn't even seem to think this was weird. She acted like I was the problem, like I was the one intruding. On her video shoot, I told her again that she was trespassing and needed to leave. She sighed dramatically and turned to her camera. "Okay guys, slight change of plans. The energy here is toxic." I didn't say anything else. I just walked away and called the police. And that's where the story really started to spiral. The police arrived about 20 minutes later. I was standing out by the mailbox just to make sure Karen and her crew didn't try to drive off before they showed up. To be honest, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know if this situation was considered trespassing or some sort of rental fraud. I just knew something wasn't right, and someone had to intervene before it went further. When the officer stepped out of the patrol car, I explained everything calmly: the unauthorized rental, the stranger filming in my garage, and the fact that my tenant, Kelly, had somehow rented the space without my knowledge or permission. The officer looked at me, then at the scene unfolding behind me. Karen and her crew were still in the garage, casually filming and applying makeup under the ring light. One of them even tried to offer the officer a bottle of sparkling water like it was just another day on set. The officer asked to speak to the woman in charge, and Karen stepped forward, all smiles, phone still in hand, clearly recording everything. She tried to charm her way through it, explaining that she paid for the space through an app and had no idea there was anything wrong. But when the officer asked who she paid and how she got the lock code, things got quiet fast. Karen hesitated and then mumbled Kelly's name. That was it. The officer asked me to call Kelly outside, which I did. She came out after a few minutes, looking like she had just woken up from a nap, rubbing her eyes and pretending to be confused. "Oh," she said, trying to play innocent. "There must have been a misunderstanding. I thought it'd be okay to rent out the garage since it wasn't being used." I was stunned by how casually she said it. No apology, no embarrassment, just this cool, detached attitude like she was explaining why she borrowed a mug without asking. The officer asked Kelly if she had permission to rent out the space. She shrugged and said, "Well, technically, on the property I live in." That's when I interrupted and clarified everything. The lease only covered the house, not the garage. The garage was on my side of the property line. I kept my personal belongings in there, and nowhere, at any point, had I given her access to it for business or rental use. The officer nodded and turned back to Kelly. "You understand this could be considered unauthorized subletting of private property, right?" he said. She didn't respond, just looked down and mumbled something about needing extra cash. She said she didn't think I'd care, since I never used it anyway. Karen and her crew, realizing this could turn into a bigger issue, started packing up. But not before Karen loudly said, "This is so unprofessional. I'm leaving a 1-star review for sure." She stormed out like she was the one who had been wronged. The officer let them go with a warning, since technically, they had been invited into the garage by someone with access to the lock. But he gave Karen a stern warning that if she returned without permission, it would be trespassing. As for Kelly, he advised me to speak to my landlord or legal counsel about breach of lease terms. He even wrote a brief report and gave me the incident number, just in case I needed documentation. After they left, Kelly tried to act like everything was fine. She walked past me and said, "Guess that won't be happening again," with a forced little laugh. But I wasn't smiling. I didn't say a word. I just went back inside, closed the blinds, and sat at my kitchen table, heart still pounding. What bothered me most wasn't even the fact that she used my garage. It was how easily she justified it. How casually she used something that wasn't hers and involved total strangers with cameras without any concern for my privacy or safety. I started going through the garage later that day. That's when I noticed some of my boxes had been opened. My old tools had been moved around. One of the bins I kept my late father's vintage records in was missing. That was the moment the frustration turned into something else: anger. This wasn't just a harmless side hustle. Something personal had been violated, and I wasn't going to let it slide. The next day, I started gathering evidence. I spent the next morning reviewing every photo, every video, every scrap of evidence I could find. The garage had a small security camera I'd installed months earlier, mainly to monitor for raccoons or break-ins. I didn't even remember it was still on, but sure enough there it was. Days of footage, all neatly time-stamped, just waiting to be reviewed. And what I saw made my stomach turn. It wasn't just one vlog. Karen had filmed multiple videos inside my garage over the course of 3 days. She had brought in boxes of props, ring lights, and even a fake neon sign that read "Self-Made Queen." There were scenes where she tried on luxury outfits, danced for TikTok, and even reviewed skincare products, placing them on top of my dad's old workbench like it was hers. In one video, she even said, "Welcome back to my studio. I just love how cozy this new setup is." My garage, my space, called her studio, and thousands of people watching and commenting with fire emojis and praise. And then I saw the moment that changed everything. Karen opened one of my storage boxes live on camera. She laughed at what she called old man stuff, then pulled out a record sleeve one from my dad's vinyl collection. She waved it in front of the camera and joked, "This is like a fossil," before carelessly tossing it aside. That wasn't just stuff. That was memory. That was legacy. That was mine. I knew right then this wasn't just a minor annoyance. This was a violation of privacy, of boundaries, of respect. So I took action. First, I made copies of the footage, saved them to a hard drive, and backed them up in the cloud. Then I contacted the platform Karen used to rent the space. Turns out, she had listed it on a peer-to-peer rental app, tagging it as a private creative studio in a quiet Chicago neighborhood. She uploaded my photos from inside the garage, which she must have taken without my knowledge. I submitted a complaint to the app, including the video evidence, timestamps, and proof that she had no ownership or legal right to list the property. They responded within hours. Karen's account was suspended, and the listing was removed. They also assured me they would be launching an investigation and, if needed, would provide all records to the authorities. But I wasn't stopping there. I confronted Kelly that evening. I printed screenshots, showed her the footage, and laid out everything she had allowed. She tried to play it down again, saying Karen was a friend and that she just wanted to help her build her brand. But I wasn't hearing it anymore. I told her the garage was off limits, that I had filed a formal complaint, and that I was contacting the property manager to report a breach of lease. What shocked me most was how unbothered she looked. She didn't even apologize. She just said, "Well, it's not like anything was stolen, right?" That was it. The next morning, I spoke to the property manager. I shared all the details: the unauthorized rental, the broken trust, and the violation of property boundaries. She was furious. Kelly had already been under review for several other tenant complaints, and this incident pushed things over the edge. A formal eviction notice was sent out within 72 hours. And then something unexpected happened. One of Karen's videos started going viral for the wrong reasons. Someone on Reddit had shared a clip of her mocking my garage, and users quickly pieced together that she wasn't the owner of the space. People began commenting, calling her out for using someone else's property without consent. A few even recognized the record sleeve she mocked. Turns out, it was a rare pressing collectors knew well. Karen tried to turn off the comments. She even deleted one of the videos, but it was too late. The internet had receipts. Suddenly, the influencer image she worked so hard to build began crumbling. And while I didn't set out to ruin anyone, there was a strange sense of justice in it all. The kind that doesn't come from shouting or fighting, but from the truth quietly, firmly standing on its own. By the end of that week, Kelly had moved out. The garage was back in my hands. And Karen's online empire? Well, let's just say, the studio she loved so much had disappeared from her feed entirely. Once everything had calmed down, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The garage was mine again. Quiet, untouched, familiar. I stood in the middle of that space for a long time, just looking around. The old boxes, the tools, the creaky shelves, everything felt oddly comforting, like it had weathered a storm and still stood proud. I hadn't realized how much it meant to me until it had been taken, piece by piece, without my knowledge, without my consent. I started reorganizing everything, carefully repacking the vinyl records, wiping the dust off my dad's toolbox, replacing the broken light bulbs. With every movement, I felt like I was reclaiming something deeper, more than just a room. I was reclaiming my peace. Karen disappeared from our block after that. I never saw her filming outside again. Her car, which used to be parked across from my house almost daily, vanished. Word got around quickly too. Neighbors who had previously fawned over her vlog persona were suddenly distant. Some even apologized for not noticing what was going on. A few admitted they'd been interviewed by her while she stood in front of my garage pretending it was hers. Kelly, for her part, left quietly. No goodbyes, no explanation. She packed up in 2 days and didn't look back. I heard from the landlord that she moved to a different state. Maybe to start over. Maybe to avoid more embarrassment. Either way, I didn't miss the slamming doors or the constant stream of strangers in the driveway, but but the part that stuck with me most wasn't the drama or the fallout. It was the lesson. See, for the longest time, I thought being a good neighbor meant staying quiet, keeping the peace, letting things slide. I didn't want to be the person always complaining or starting problems. But sometimes, silence becomes permission. And what starts as one small boundary crossed can quickly turn into something much bigger. I learned that it's okay to speak up, to draw a line, to say, "This is mine, and you don't have the right to take it." And strangely, despite all the frustration, I came out of the experience with something valuable. I started using the garage again, not just as storage, but as a little creative space of my own. I cleared a corner, brought in a desk, set up some lights. Nothing fancy, just a chair, a microphone, a few notebooks, and one day recorded a voice-over of the whole story. Posted it anonymously on a forum where people shared bizarre tenant experiences. I didn't expect much, but to my surprise, it resonated. The comments were supportive, and some shared their own stories of boundary-crossing neighbors or social media nightmares. That sparked something in me. I began writing more, sharing quiet stories about small neighborhoods, messy friendships, strange encounters. It became a kind of therapy, a way to reclaim not just space but voice. Funny enough, one of my posts was even picked up by a small podcast. The host reached out and asked if I'd ever consider coming on to talk about the garage incident. I declined. I didn't need the spotlight. I just needed the story to live, and that was enough. Now, whenever I walk past the garage, I smile not because of what happened, but because of what it taught me, that protecting what's yours doesn't make you difficult, it makes you whole, that silence isn't always peace, that sometimes, the quietest people have the strongest stories, and that no one, not even a wannabe influencer with a ring light, can take that away.